Welcome to Kids Recall. In today's video, we'll be going through the 2007 movie, Meet the Robinsons. It's time to recall. Let's get started. Turn on subtitles and spoilers ahead. The movie starts and we see a 12-year-old kid whose name is Lewis, and he lives at an orphanage. He's a young inventor who spends most of his time coming up with creative ideas and then inventing different kinds of stuff. We also see another boy named Michael, who happens to be Lewis's roommate. Lewis is always seen working. He works day in and day out, and it takes a toll on Michael because he barely gets any sleep, and he's getting tired of this hectic routine. We then see different people coming to the orphanage to adopt kids. Many people see Lewis, but no one decides to adopt him because they think he's too nerdy and too into what he does. Lewis is also tired of not being picked by any parents, and he is really worried because just after 1 year, he's going to become a teenager, and the word on the street is that people don't adopt teenagers. Lewis then curses his real mother, saying she didn't love him at all, which is why she just jumped him off in the orphanage. But the woman named Mildred at the orphanage goes on to scold Lewis for saying such things, and she tells him that she's sure that his mother loved him very much, and she must have taken this step out of necessity. Seeing that no one has picked him from the orphanage, he decides that he is going to invent the machine that will help him bring back his memories from when he was a little kid. He's sure that he's seen his mother at least once, so he's positive that he's going to be able to pull it off. The next day, there's a science fair held at his school, and he decides that he's going to take part in it. He makes the scanner machine and makes his way to the school with the machine to demonstrate it at the science fair. When he gets there, he goes on to see a 13-year-old boy named Wilbur Robinson, a mysterious boy claiming to be a time cop from the future. Robinson goes on to ask Lewis about a tall man with a black hat. He says that the tall man has seen him and he's going to do something bad to him. Lewis doesn't understand what's going on, and this is when we see a man standing there. He's wearing a black hat, and when he sees Lewis with his machine, the man takes off his hat and then sends it towards Lewis's machine. Lewis does not see the cap moving. The cap moves and works like a robot, and it takes orders from the tall man. Wilbur, on the other hand, needs to recover a time machine that a man wearing the black bowler hat has stolen. Lewis tries to demonstrate the scanner, but it has been sabotaged by Bowler Hat Guy, as it unscrewed a few screws on the machine. When the time to demonstrate the machine comes, it doesn't work, and of course everything falls apart for little Lewis, throwing the science fair into chaos. Robinson tries to run the bumps into a student who has a box full of frogs. The frogs are now on the floor and the student is pissed off at Robinson. He then goes on to gather all the frogs from the floor. Robinson, on the other hand, notices the cap going away after doing the deed, and this is when a volcano brought by a student gets active, and just like that, everything is chaos there. Lewis is extremely annoyed because his machine didn't work, and it was really insulting for him. Amidst all this chaos, he does not want to stay there, and he leaves right away. Robinson sees his leaving and goes on to follow him outside. When everyone has left the science fair hall, the tall man enters with an expression of satisfaction on his face and goes on to take Lewis's machine with him. On the other hand, we see Lewis is really upset. Taking out his frustration, he goes on to tear off the pages from his diary. Robinson comes to him and tells him again that he has come from the future and in his time he's a policeman. Lewis, who is already frustrated, goes on to flip out on him, telling him to go away, adding that he does not have time for this nonsense. He again says that he has come from the future and that the tall man has stolen a time machine. Lewis tells him to go away, but Robinson asks if he's able to prove that he's not lying. Will Lewis go back to the science fair and repair the machine? Lewis reluctantly says yes, and this is when Robinson picks him up and throws him inside his own time machine. Lewis is fascinated to see this, and Robinson then goes on to take him to the future, 2037. Everything is different in this era. Lewis is fascinated to see all the advancements that have been made by mankind. Lewis feels that he's dreaming. But then he comes up with a plan. He remembers that he had to find his mother, so he goes on to ask Robinson to take him to his mother using the time machine. Robinson agrees, and they sit in the time machine to travel to another era. But on their way, the machine breaks down, and Robinson then flips out on Lewis, telling him that because of him, the time machine is broken down. He then goes on to tell Lewis to repair the time machine for him. Lewis agrees to repairing the time machine, but he has one stipulation. He goes on to tell Robinson that when the machine is ready to be used again, Robinson will take him to his mother, and Robinson agrees. The scene then changes to the tall man who now has a scanner made by Lewis. We see that he's in a meeting, and there he goes on to demonstrate the scanner. He, however, ends up acting like a jerk because he doesn't actually know anything about the machine. The people in the meeting just think he's some kind of crazy guy and go on to throw him out of the building. The tall man then decides that he's going to find Lewis. On the other hand, Lewis is taken to a garage by Robinson, where they plan on working on the time machine. Lewis gets a pipe there and falls down. He ends up landing in a garden. When he gets out of the pipe, he sees a door. Lewis goes on to knock on the door, but a monster with tentacles comes out. Lewis gets scared and runs out of there. He then comes across an old man to whom he asks about the garage. The old man does not answer his question and goes on to tell him that he's looking for his teeth. Lewis is weirded out, and the old man then takes Lewis with him. They end up somewhere else as we see both Lewis and the old man coming out of a commode. Robinson, on the other hand, goes back to the garage, but he doesn't find Lewis there. He gets pissed off, thinking that Lewis has run away. He goes on to find him, and he is running around looking for Lewis. Lewis is also running around looking for him. Lewis and Robinson then bump into each other, much to Robinson's annoyance. Robinson then grabs him from the ear and drags him back to the garage, telling him that he's going nowhere until he gets his machine running again. Tall man, in the meantime, keeps looking for Lewis, and he ends up meeting Michael, Lewis's roommate. Michael is not well, and he's seen putting ice on his eye because he got hurt during the game, and he also has been kicked off the team, so he's not in a great mood either. The tall man then learns through his magical cap that Lewis is now in the future and decides to travel to that future. On the other hand, Robinson and Lewis are burning the midnight oil working on the time machine. Robinson and Lewis now start getting along, and when they are working, Robinson goes on to tell him that his father was a great creator. He made 3 time machines, and one of those machines has been stolen by the tall man. The tall man, in the meantime, has come to the future too and starts looking for Lewis using his cap. Lewis, on the other hand, is seen having dinner with Robinson and his whole family. Robinson then introduces Lewis to his whole family, and Lewis sees that his family uses very high-tech stuff. They have robots as servants, and when they're all having dinner, one of the robots malfunctions and starts acting weird, which disturbs everyone dinner, much to the annoyance of the whole family. Robinson then grabs Lewis and takes him to the robot, telling everyone that his friend is great at repairing stuff, so he'll repair this robot as well. Lewis says that he doesn't understand this level of technology, but the whole family keeps requesting him to repair the robot. In the meantime, the tall man learns that Lewis is at Robinson's place, so he goes on to take control over the mind of a frog and send him to the Robinsons' house. The frog is, however, unable to do anything of note, and on the other hand, Lewis tries to repair the robot and ends up making it even worse. The robot goes on to spill food on everyone in the Robinsons' family, but they're still very nice to Lewis and tell him that he's very talented and that he should keep working just like that. Lewis is really happy. He gets emotional and tells them that he's never had a family, but seeing them, he wishes he had a family. It should have been like the Robinsons. In the meantime, the tall man goes on to send a dinosaur to the Robinsons' house, and when Lewis sees it, he's fascinated and goes on to berate Robinson for not telling him he had a pet dinosaur. Just then, the dinosaur goes on to attack Lewis, and all of the family tries to save his life. Lewis manages to get away, and the situation turns chaotic. The dinosaur then goes on to chase Lewis yet again, and just as he's about to eat the boy, Robinson gets there in time to save his life. Robinson is then picked up by the dinosaur, and this is when the device set into the dinosaur's head falls off and the creature right away collapses to the ground. Robinson's family then gets there, and they're relieved to see him safe. His mother goes on to hug and kiss him, and Lewis feels sad because he's never felt the love of a mother. Robinson's mother notices this, and she goes on to kiss Lewis as well, which makes Lewis feel really special too. That night, when all of them are sitting together, the whole family decides that they're going to adopt Lewis. Lewis is really happy to learn this, but Robinson goes on to tell everyone that Lewis has come from the past, and his mother says that he should go back to the past. Lewis argues, saying that when they came to the future, Robinson promised him that he would take him to his mother. Robinson says that he just said it, meaning that he never planned on fulfilling the promise. Lewis is really upset, and now he's heartbroken. He goes out of the house and sits beside a tree in a garden. He's crying when the tall man gets there and tells him that he can take him to his mother if he's willing to go with him. That's when Robinson also gets there and tries to stop Lewis, but Lewis goes away with the tall man in front of Robinson's eyes, who seems worried. The tall man then makes Lewis work on the scanner machine and then goes on to tie him up. Lewis goes on to ask why on earth the guy has tied him up, and what does he want from him? This is when the bowler hat guy, also known as the tall man, reveals that Cornelius Robinson is, in fact, Lewis's future self, and that he himself is an adult version of Lewis's roommate, Michael. The tall man then goes on to turn on the light of the room. Lewis is shocked to see that this room is the one they used to have in the orphanage. Lewis then looks at the bowler hat guy and goes on to ask him how on earth did he end up like that. The tall man then goes on to tell him the whole story. He says that because he was kept awake by Lewis's work on the scanner, Michael fell asleep during a Little League baseball game and failed to make an important catch, costing his team the championship. Michael became so withdrawn and bitter that he was never adopted and remained in the orphanage long after it closed. Doris the Cap is also with the tall guy, and it turns out that it is Door 15, one of Lewis's failed and abandoned inventions. Lewis abandoned Doris because he thought it could be put to bad use, so Doris is also angry at Lewis for abandoning it. They both blamed Lewis for their misfortunes and decided to ruin his life because Michael says that he thought a lot about it. He was alone and pathetic his whole life because all the other kids got adopted and he was left to live on his own. So he decided to take revenge on Lewis. Lewis is then saved by Robinson and Doris, and the tall guy, also known as Michael, now goes back to the past to enact his plan. Robinson is also taken by light and he just disappears. Lewis then sees on TV that Michael has produced many copies of Doris, and they've been creating chaos in the whole city. Doris takes the time machine and travels back. He sees Michael and tells him to get rid of Doris because Doris is not loyal to anyone and it could kill him too. He then confronts Doris in the past and destroys her by promising to never invent her, restoring the future to its utopian state. Robinson tries to ask the adult Michael to join the family, but he has fled in remorse. Back in Wilbur's time, Lewis finally meets Cornelius face to face. Cornelius, his own future self, explains how the memory scanner started their successful career and persuades Lewis to return to the science fair. Robinson takes Lewis back, but makes one stop first, as he promised to take Lewis back to see the moment when his mother abandoned him. Robinson drops Lewis off in his own time and leaves. Lewis heads to the fair, and on the way he passes the ground, waking up Michael just in time for him to make the winning catch. Back at the fair, Lewis asks for one more chance to demonstrate his scanner, and this time it succeeds. He's adopted by Lucille, one of the science fair judges, and her husband Bud, who nicknames him Cornelius and takes him home. And with that, the movie comes to an end. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave a like to help the channel out. And thank you for watching.